Welcome to Electripreneur Secrets, the Electrician podcast. I'm Clay Newmeyer. With me, as always, my esteemed co-host, Joseph, the sales bot, Lucani. Introduce him every day as the sales bot because he's earned that reputation, and I'll continue to flatter you with it.
Well, thank you, Clay. I appreciate the kind words.
You got it. You got it. Today, we're focused on some pretty big things that are going to help you master sales, simplify pricing, and deliver premium level service. Just like that. And before this show recording right here, we're live on our Facebook group, engaging with our live attendees like we do 5 days a week to help you guys rise. And we were just talking about how these little actions can add up, how the little things can add up and actually determine not only a sale, but maybe even level of sale, or if people want to work with you at all. Getting into the specifics, we're talking about your presentation and your execution and the noise, the sounds in your backgrounds, and the things you're doing that really can earn or divide that trust and respect. All right. Man. What are we talking about today, Joseph?
I've been so pumped to talk about this topic because it's one of those little things that so many people don't pay attention to, but every single one of us has had to experience, right? So let's say you have a situation where let's be close to home. Let's say a client were to reach out to you, right? And they were going to ask you for a particular amount of advice, right? Hey, Clay, I'm in a situation. I need your support. But the entire time that you were there and you're talking to them, you want to give me undivided attention. You hear brrr, 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 bang, bang, bang brrr, in the background. You hear someone's working.
Yeah.
What is that telling you about their level of engagement to you and to the answer that you're going to be giving them?
Yeah. I mean, a couple things. A, are you fully engaged? Right? B, are you respecting their ability to even keep interested and listen and be a part of it?
You're right. So that's the main things that are going to be taken away. Is like, is someone going to want to listen? And two, are they even going to be in a place where they can respond? Now, if we ourselves hear that, what happens when our customers call and ask that? Because the thing is that do we feel respected? Do you feel like your time is respected? Do you feel like your knowledge is respected? Well, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, me personally, I don't, and I have a short attention span, but an even shorter when I'm being presented to. Does that make sense?
It does. In other words, if someone's going to be talking to you, they got to make sure they're capturing your attention right now. Otherwise, it's going to drift. It's just going to happen. Yeah. And that's where you get a lot of the yeah, wow, that's crazy. And it's like, no, they're not listening to you. It's okay.
And if that's what you're getting, I would also recommend to go back to our episode where we talked about reading their minds and recognizing some of those tells, because we definitely discussed that as well in the past, right?
Yeah, and you know me, I love talking about nonverbal cues. They have saved me in so many different ways because the stuff that I wasn't really well familiar with until I had to get intentionally trained on it. So there's other things that people do that will throw the other listener that a lot of us don't tend on really giving attention to. So some of us will say, all right, well, I'm working. What can you ask me to do? What would you blame me? What can I do differently? Well, does your customer stand to blame that you're working right now? They can't possibly. So if you don't stop working when you're working with your customer and they give you a call, what does that say about the care and attention that you're going to give them?
It's definitely a physical indication that you might even be half-assing that attention.
And yeah. And do people want to work with someone that's going to half-ass the connection?
No.
Of course not. So the first thing that we can do in those circumstances is to say, you know what? Give me one moment. I'm actually serving a customer right now. But if you give me one moment, I would love to be able to help you. I'm just going to put this down. I want to give you my undivided attention. Wouldn't that communicate a much higher level of detail and dedication to the service?
Definitely.
Just being able to say, I'm going to pause. I'm doing something right now, but I want to make sure that you're served at the highest level. And that gives you, make sure I can hear you and you can hear me.
Yeah. Not only that, but I mean, in your presentation, As we've discussed many times, if we're
Mhm.
focused on understanding our client at the highest level so that we can serve them at the highest level, how
Mhm.
much better would your retention be if you were focused in every interaction?
Exactly. You know, I actually heard a great example of like, why do people practice meditation? It's like, it's not going to help anyone. It's like, maybe, but the thought of being mindful and present to your customers, wouldn't that be worth practicing? Saying,
Yeah.
how can I be more present for you so you can intentionally recognize that this person is really trying to listen to everything I'm saying? That's a superpower that not enough people have.
Yeah. And honestly, some people might even roll their eyes at this and go, yeah, that's how I am, and I'm not changing for anyone. Or, yeah, it's not that big of a deal.
Okay. And
Isn't it?
mhm.
Isn't
I
it
actually
just each small thing that adds up that just becomes either a price comparison or you're in a different league?
I love you. I love you because literally the exact same thing I was going to say. I love how our brains run parallel, and forgive me for interrupting on that. It
No,
was
it's
one of those
perfect.
moments
It's
where
great.
it was great that you're running a parallel to it. So, if you keep following that train of thought, right? You're saying, all right, there's background noise going on. There's a lot happening. That's only one aspect that can turn your customer off, right? Now, you said it might be small. That's something that I'm going to do. I'm not going to plan on changing. You also have to remember that there's a lot of us that have different needs when it comes to sounds. So, like, sake of argument, like with you, you're saying you have a short attention span. If there's too much going on in the background, you may be focused on what they're doing rather than what they're saying, right?
Yeah.
For people like me, certain sounds are very physically painful. So, like, if I hear loud screeching noises or machinery blaring, or just almost like you're not showing respect to me on the other end of the line. And what does that communicate? Where if I can't even comfortably listen to you, what is my experience going to be like when you come to my home?
Yeah.
How many of us are actually thinking of that?
Not
Very
enough, I
few.
would say. Not enough, right?
Okay.
All of this kind of leads me back, and forgive me if I'm jumping ahead or off on a
Sure.
tangent, but it all leads me back to like my great aunties or my great grandmother's dining room table and like etiquette.
Ooh.
And I can remember, the elders of my youth saying
Mhm.
things like, you, it was fork and knife policies, even. Don't switch
Mhm.
hands when you go to cut.
Mhm.
Don't ever wear your hat to the table, right?
Oh,
No elbows on
yeah.
the table. You
Mhm.
don't chew with your mouth open. My mom used to slap me before my mouth was even open. She's like, I could tell you were open, like, boom, do not chew with your mouth open. All this kind of ties into what you're saying too, I feel like. Because I know there's
Yeah.
people out there that are going back with a Subway sandwich in their hand and talking to their customer while they're freaking eating.
Yeah. That was literally something that the moment you mentioned dinner table etiquette, the first thing I thought of was how many of us, and I've been guilty as well, how many of us have eaten a sandwich when we're either on a Zoom call or on a phone with the customer? And Clay, have you ever had to experience something like that before?
Of course, of course. And keep in mind, like me being someone I just openly admitted, my mom would cuff me if my mouth opened up at the dinner table, chewing
Hmm.
or trying to talk with food in my mouth. So how do you
Hmm.
think that sits in my life with rules around my house? It's
Yeah.
about the same. It was nails on the chalkboard for her, and it's nails on the chalkboard for me. And the reality is, we're trying to get to the kitchen table to present options, but we'll never get there if we don't show the same mannerisms and respect that they've come to expect in their own home.
1,000%. And that actually leads us to the point of what we're trying to get to. Clay, I love it. You and I run in parallel today. So if we recognize that there were different things that we experienced in both our personal lives and in our professional lives, why are we not calling that more into attention on the things that we train? So some people might say, well, it's all the things that you're saying that matter. Sometimes it's what you're not saying, but also not anything you're doing at all. It could be, what are they hearing? Sometimes we'll have calls and it'll be someone who hasn't worked with us yet, and they'll be walking back and front through Home Depot, and you'll hear loudspeakers in the background, and you'll hear beeping in the background, and their cell phone service is cutting in and out. Does that show that they're really willing to listen?
No.
If that was that to us, imagine I'm a customer who hasn't actually walked in their shoes before. We don't understand that you have to run a business yourself. You're a sole proprietor and you've got, I have to get the materials and I'm the one who comes out and I'm one who designs it. They may not understand that. But if you're not able to take the attention and say, you know what, I want to show you the most respect. Let me step aside for a moment just so I can be sure I'm intentional with you.
Yeah.
That'll be the defining factor of whether this customer appreciates you or not.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the music in the background, all that, it actually communicates, please don't interrupt me. I'm in the zone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm now working, and it could interfere with your clients actually feeling welcomed. It's almost like closing a door in your office.
Mm-hmm.
People keep
Yeah.
walking by, even if they think you might be available to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
The open door policy is like, okay, noise, attention, ready to go. And something you said earlier reminded me of a quote, and let's try not to butcher this, but I think it goes, and I don't know who said it, but your actions speak so loud, I can't hear what you're saying.
That is actually very on point for this.
Have you heard that
And
before?
I have.
Yeah.
And actually it triggers a thought that comes to mind. Speaking as a former, cigarette smoker and former cigar smoker and everything, there's a sound that a lot of us experience and know that can trigger other people. And that's how many times when we're in a rough conversation, could you imagine wanting to light up a cigarette and talk to someone? Right. But if I were to take off my screen and you and I are talking and suddenly hear, what is going on here? How do you know that I'm only smoking a cigarette?
Yeah. No, for sure.
It's a rough situation. And additionally, let's say someone like myself who just recently quit and I hear you sparking up on the other side. Is that going to make me more happy or less happy talking to you?
No less, definitely.
So if we've gotten the situation right now, let's just talk about the few things we've mentioned so far.
Yeah.
We're saying when you're on the job site, making it a point of, you know what, put down the tool for a second. Don't be putting on your hydraulics and banging all your pneumatic drills all the time. Like it's not, we're not a machine shop.
Yeah.
Put the tools down when the customer answers. If you're eating food, stop, put it down. Don't continue to eat. The customer, no matter how quiet you think you're going to be, they are going to know. If you're in a situation where you're smoking, don't intentionally light up or spark up with the customer knowing that they're listening to it. They will listen to your inhales and they will listen to those three things. Just these three things alone, do you feel like the average contractor is committing these crimes?
I would say, yeah, there's many transgressions in that department for sure. Yeah. Not to mention, taking calls from other customers is a huge one we didn't touch on.
Mm-hmm.
While I'm in the presence of someone's home, I've never had someone disagree with this. Is it fair to say that if I take a call from Jason while I'm at John's, that I'm no longer giving John 110%?
I agree with that completely. If you keep thinking about it even further, you can go and say, well, all right, that's you answering for John. But what about any call that gets answered? What happens if your girlfriend sets a call and maybe you have a bad day that day? What if the supply house calls and you're waiting for it? Should you do that should we even be answering the phone in the customer's house? Where should we do if an important call comes in?
Yeah. It's crazy, man. I literally, and I've said this story before, but I lost it on a contractor. I completely lost it. They showed up, they fought in my driveway. That's how I knew they were there. Before knocking, I could hear bickering in my driveway. I only expected one tech to be there in the first place. So now I've got two, and they're in a domestic in my driveway arguing about pay and who's running what company. Then later on, I won't go into all the details, but later on, while he's servicing my AC unit there, he takes a call from dispatch who said that the last house he went to, he disconnected the wrong home's AC unit. And so he's swearing and defending himself. So blame, excuses, denial, playing below the line, right? It's everyone else's fault. I can't believe this. Looks at me and ended up making the situation even worse. But I could not believe it. All I wanted was this person to get off my property and never come back.
And how confident did you feel in that? I mean, like, let's say they didn't fight in the driveway. I'm going to paint the scenario and make it a little bit different.
Yeah.
And just to exaggerate a point, let's say he showed up perfect, uniformed, clean cut, knocks on the door, follows the process, does everything they're supposed to do, but that conversation still happens. Would you still have less confidence in this technician?
Absolutely.
Hell
The
yeah.
fact that he was mid-task, literally tools on, gauges on, and picked up the phone, to me was a red flag.
Exactly. I've actually had some circumstances where, I've seen technicians that I've trained and ones that I've worked with that, didn't make the cut after a long period of time, where they would be working on generator maintenance. They drained the oil out, or were supposed to drain the oil out, took a call, and ended up adding oil without draining it, and then blowing the pistons themselves because they double added. There's now like 3 gallons of oil in a 1.8 liter equipment.
Yikes.
And it's like, what do you do? It's like, well, I thought I did it. Well, what happened? Well, a call came in. Okay, well, there's a Zen principle of be here, be now. And how many people fail in that simple concept?
Yeah.
They may be here, but they're not actually here. They're
Yeah.
physically here, but they're emotionally somewhere else or mentally somewhere else.
Yeah.
And if our clients aren't getting that mental attention from us, we're not showing that they're willing to serve at the highest level. And if we can't serve them in the most minimal ways, how can we really be trusted to service of them at the highest?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, full circle. If you're at Jason's and John calls, John also deserves 110%.
Exactly.
They also have concerns, have an opportunity or demand to discuss, or maintenance, whatever the situation, doesn't matter. How are you going to serve that person at the highest level if you're mid-task in something else? Are you able to now recite your process and answer the call in a way that qualifies this caller and gets them on the schedule in the right place?
There actually are some ways you can do that. And the best thing is to buy yourself some time. So in some circumstances, I found that actually having like Ring Central or other like app softwares that can extend the amount of rings that you physically get before it goes to voicemail could be helpful, as well as letting them know, even in the ringing process, you could be like, hey, just letting you know, we're currently with a customer. We will always be sure to get back to you within the next 15 minutes. Your call is important to us. Please stay on the line. We're going to answer your call the first chance we get. And then if for some reason you can't, being able to say, we will call you back within 15 minutes or within 30 minutes, but on the chance you need urgent service, here's the link to our contact us now form, just so that they know that they're not going somewhere else.
Yeah.
And then when Jason does get the moment where you're able to give him a call, go back to the VIN. And the first thing you should say is, I am so sorry that I didn't get to you the moment you called. Our goal here is always to serve you at the highest level. I was with a client at the time, helping them with their needs. And I wanted to make sure that I got those needs taken care of before I can move on to the next. How can I serve you today?
Love it.
Wouldn't that give a little better clarity as to why we're here, what we're doing, and who we're trying to serve?
100%. Yeah, 100%. Awesome. And besides that, I mean, there is something called the Pomodoro technique. And there's something that you've subscribed to and mentioned many times about these 45-minute attention span intervals. And really, if you begin to leverage this stuff and put it into play, then those breaks are coming anyway. We need to break to be efficient, to remain efficient, and to have communication touch points.
Exactly. I would agree with you completely on that. Knowing that you have the mental space to have those breaks, but in addition to it, knowing that I'm going to reduce the opportunity to upset a customer when they would be unduly upset by it.
Yeah. I personally feel that getting someone to answer your phones and trained to do so the way that you intend to qualify people is one of the first most important transitions that any contractor faces. I honestly, I just stand strong on this. You cannot serve everyone 110% at the same time. You have to delegate something, right? And if you can't delegate the work right now, then you've got a choice. I'm going to serve people half-ass. I'm going to lose from the time delay of getting back to people, or I'm going to train someone to qualify my prospects for me. Because the next thing that happens with poor qualification is you end up spending time with people that aren't paying, that aren't your ideal client.
You're right. And that's why, going through, that's why we created the Brighter Day process. That's why there are processes in place to better qualify people as they come in, you know, and I guess the moral of the story of what we're trying to communicate behind all this is your story and mine, right? Where some people, I'm sure, don't mind going and having a sandwich when they're on the phone with someone, right? I'm sure there's got to be someone who it wouldn't bother. But you've got on your background where you were getting slapped across the face if someone was chewing or talking with their mouth full. And you got someone like me who the sound of chewing is, I hate it. I fucking hate it. If anyone were to ever want to upset me on a meeting, chew on a meeting, but we're not everyone, but we are enough that if we were trying to hire you and you did that, we probably would have a much worse impression of you and your business as a result. So just like the rest of our process is built, we're trying to remove all the small, dumb things, the little things that add up over time. It's like, can you believe, like a typical line I like to use is, can you blame me for wanting to educate you guys on this? Some of you may have made it to this part of the podcast and be like, well, what am I learning? I'm teaching you, these are the things that are going to drive your customers away consistently over and over again. And you won't know why.
Yeah. Yeah. The
It's
point,
so dangerous.
just like electrical code, the point of your process is setting your minimum standard. Right? And if that minimum threshold is below what some clients may experience as below standard, then we should raise it up. That's all. And Ron actually in the live audience has a good point here. He says, well, I've had to take a family emergency call during a service, and they were able to understand that. I do want to just point out that my phone is always here. It's always beside me. It's always there because it's a smart device that really helps us. However, I haven't had my ringer on for months because we're constantly engaged with helping people and serving at the highest level. So what that means is I'm always aware of the calls and messages that come in, but I don't allow them to take precedence. What do you have to say to the family emergency?
So family emergencies are, I found, almost like a blanket statement, because how many times will we use that same excuse when it wasn't that? And Ron, I'm not trying to insult you whatsoever by any means. I am very certain that whatever you had was an actual emergency. If it truly is an emergency, having your phone on you, you can set it to do not disturb, and you can actually program which people can bypass do not disturb.
I love that you said that.
Yeah. So my wife, you as an example, Clay, you can bypass my do not disturb, but very, very few people access that.
Yeah.
It's got to be one of those things where if I was on a meeting right now, like what would it take? What kind of emergency would it take for me to get off the podcast right now and say, Clay, I have to take this?
And that's actually easy to answer because in our values, it's health, family, then business. So if it's something detrimental to your health, immediately a threat to your health, absolutely. Yeah. If it's the health of your family or your relationship, absolutely. Right? If it's the missus calling to say she's due and about to deliver, the water broke, absolutely.
I'm going. Yeah, I get it.
And I want that ring to come through. So I love that you said also that do not disturb with programming certain numbers to come through. But at the same time, in a healthy relationship, those people inside the circle of trust would never violate, and they would understand that you are in a situation trying to serve at the highest level. A text message would suffice. I'll get back to you on break.
Yeah.
For everything else.
Can we actually also, there's one last thing, because I feel like this might be another topic as well.
Yeah.
It's also managing relationship expectations with those calls. Because I remember, and I'm sure other people who are also married or spouses or partners understand that your person's going to want to get in contact with you. And some of our partners decide that they're more vocal than the others. and they want to talk or they want to message or they want to check in. And they're like, why aren't you checking in with me?
Yeah.
But now the reason is as such. My number one goal, sweetheart, is to provide the best, most amazing experience to every one of my customers. And just like I would be disrespecting you if I was talking to someone else while talking to you, what experience would they receive if I'm with them and I drop it to answer for someone else?
Yeah. I love when you call me sweetheart, by the way. Thank you.
I had mentally considered Mel, but apparently, hey, you're at the same category, right?
Yeah, that's my favorite role play. Yeah, exactly. And Ron agreed 100%. Ringer's never on. Wife calls me at work or never calls me and she has the bypass. So very similar situation. You know what? It's always best policy to have a process and have that discussion, have it communicated. Otherwise, it sets everyone up for challenges. Guys, we went pretty deep on this topic today. Definitely just want to add one last thing as we talked about eating and hygiene, right? It's another reason for rear view mirrors. Check your teeth, check your breath, throw a tic tac in, whatever you got to do before you go back to that client engagement. Just respect these people to the best of your ability, and you will see this add up. This is one of those things, though, as you obey by these rules and implement this in your process, the best thing that happens is nothing. You never lose a customer, you never lose focus on a customer, and you continue to serve at the highest level. So you might not notice anything, but that in itself is a win.
Freaking men. Because there are some times where the smallest actions lead to the biggest wins, but I feel like this would apply to electricians. When we do our jobs right, it's usually a trade standard to say they never even knew I was there. The wires are cut behind the walls and I fished it. I didn't have to cut. I didn't have to spackle. Didn't have to paint. It looks like it was always there in the first place. Wouldn't it make sense that our wins also share that same caliber? The customer was never even interrupted once. They never even knew that I was focused. They didn't even know I was running a business outside of focusing just on them.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. All right. So cranking out, James says he's hungry. Yeah, absolutely. Cranking out a couple of action items, guys. I believe we just gave you one. If you're going to eat, right, you got to take breaks. Just do that energy audit again. Do that check. Do the hygiene checks. Go back to the pre-arrival checklist and just make sure you're set to go back in the house with your game face on. Keep in mind, energy is in transfer all the time, right? So we have to be mindful of that. All-star action, Joseph?
All-star action is simply just wondering to yourself and taking the conscious effort of saying, I know for a fact I'm going to consistently deliver on this process. The reason why I'm saying that's an all-star action is we can sometimes remember, okay, I'm going to check my teeth after I eat. We can think I'm going to, walk away whenever a call comes in and I'm at Home Depot. But the all-star action is the understanding the why.
Yeah.
It's saying, I am doing this to serve my client at the highest level. And the reason what makes it an all-star action is when you can develop in that mentality, it'll start to bleed into your personal life. And as that does, it stops being part of the process and starts becoming part of you. And that's what makes you from an all-star to a standard person.
Great habits. Love it. Okay. In this episode, we talked a bit about qualifying, guys, and our club membership value piece. Great news is we give that away for free. So if you haven't received that yet, go ahead and engage in this live in the Facebook group, or even just post on the wall there. You can type in club membership and we'll send that to you so you can start qualifying. And I believe, Joseph, in your first year of using that club membership in our front door that we also give away the script for it, you locked in about 30K of sales up front before ever putting these people on the schedule.
Yep. It was the first thing that ended up happening. So one of the benefits and the values behind it was a pre-sold inspection. So these were already line items that were sold, that were done. That was like, hey, we have these inspections. They're already in place. We already received that many customers being willing to put 300, 300, 300, 300. And eventually you had 100 first-class members and you didn't even have to do the inspections until the time came. And then when we actually did those inspections, the customers were asking for even more. So it was a win-win across the board.
Love it. And that's all qualifying calls up front, right? So imagine you had a way to prioritize the leads that you're already getting in and not just
Mhm.
ensuring that they are a customer, but also filtering out the no's and just getting to it sooner. This is a
Mhm.
superpower for your business. So I urge you guys to go ahead and grab that free value piece. And we'll continue to show up here 5 days a week and give you all of that and more, guys, as we help you master sales, simplify pricing, and deliver premium level service. I'm Clay Newmeyer. As always, Joseph Lucani with me. Can't wait to see you guys next time.
See you
Cheers to your
soon.
success.